So hello Achiever, today I am in San Diego with a new awesome guest. He's Mike Koenigs. He's the bestseller of Make, Market, Lunch and the CEO of Traffic Geyser. He's with me in this bar to answer my questions. So hello Mike.
Hi, nice.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
And I have a lot of questions to ask you, but before I would like to let you to introduce yourself. What
Sure.
do you do? And I used your software before. You inspire me.
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Who are you?
Okay, well, I am a product creator, and what I really do is I help people figure out how to turn their knowledge into products and how to spread their message worldwide. So some of the tools that I've created are products like Traffic Geyser, which allows people, say, to create a video. So this video we're making right now, you could load it in a Traffic Geyser, press a button, and it would distribute to literally hundreds of different locations on the internet. We also have a software tool called Instant Customer that lets people capture leads. So it's like an autoresponder, and it does mobile marketing and also sales automation. And then I've written books like this one here. This Make, Market, Launch teaches people how to turn their knowledge into products and services so they can sell their knowledge instead of their time, and a variety of other tools as well. They ultimately help people speak, present, multiply their income, start a small business, and grow their visibility online. And we have customers in over 60 different countries worldwide, including France. Yes, we do. We have quite a few customers, in fact. In fact, we have some that are in our mastermind group that fly all the way from France just for our mastermind here in San Diego.
Wow, it's great.
So it's fantastic, and I'm also I'm married and I have a son who's 10 years old, and he's busy becoming an entrepreneur too.
Perfect. We were talking about your story, and I would love to know your story, because a lot of people are thinking that, oh, the successful people have luck, it's easy for them, they don't have any fears, they are a superhero maybe. So can you share me your story, your struggles, and how you overcame it? It's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple. I grew up in what would be considered a lower middle class home. My dad is a barber, and I grew up in a small town called Eagle Lake, Minnesota, which is in the north central part of the United States. And growing up, I know I'd be certifiable with what would be called a learning disability. So a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD. You hear that before? And I didn't learn how to learn. So I didn't do well in school. I barely passed high school. Never went to college, and we didn't have the money either. But I did learn how to program when I was young, and I always loved computers and technology and business.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So I started one of my first companies, which was called Traffic Geyser, Digital Cafe, sorry. And what we did is we were one of the first interactive marketing agencies. We worked with, we developed some of the very first websites, online video, and we created video games for companies to help them share their branding and their message and their marketing.
Wow.
So we developed a video game that shipped in 6 million boxes of cereal for General Mills. And after 10 years in 1999, I sold it. But along the way, I struggled a lot. I ended up getting divorced. I was overweight, and at one point I was about $250,000 in debt, and unable to pay any of my bills. I was using my gas credit card to buy food at one point.
Wow.
And that's when I discovered Tony Robbins, and I saw one of his infomercials on television. I bought his Personal Power series of recordings.
I did that also.
Yeah. And I listened to the first disc, and there inside the box was a coupon for one of his live events. And I just had received a brand new credit card in the mail. So I used that credit card to buy the live event and a plane ticket.
And UPW?
It was actually, in that case, it was Life Mastery. I went right to Life Mastery, which is a bigger one. And I used up all my credit. I ended up going to the event, and at first I was afraid, because there's a lot of people jumping up and down and screaming and hugging, and I didn't...
Why do that?
Yeah, I didn't understand why they'd be doing that. And but after a few days, I decided to jump up and down and hug people too, but I also learned a lot, and I walked out of there with a life plan. I wrote down a plan for myself with some very specific goals, and I went to work And I finally had the mindset to help me achieve that. And within a few months, within about 90 days, I had turned my business around, and we were making money, and I was getting out of debt. And within a year, I sold this business to a $1 billion a year advertising agency that was publicly traded. And I ended up making enough money that I didn't have to work for a little while. And I ended up starting a couple other businesses, but I also traveled the world and visited France. I visited Italy and Greece and Egypt. I traveled Egypt with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer, if you know them.
I love them.
Yes. And I ended up continuing my education with Tony Robbins, and over the next few years really got my life back put together and moved to San Diego. And the first person I called was Chris Hendrickson, who was my account representative, who ended up being married to Pam Hendrickson, who it turned out had produced almost all of Tony Robbins' products for nearly 20 years. And if you've ever heard the story of the waiter that Tony tells, Chris Hendrickson is the waiter.
Oh, it's him.
That's that story.
Wow, I would love to meet him.
Yeah.
I love this story.
I'll make sure I introduce you to him. So in any case, we ended up becoming best friends.
I cried during the story.
It's a great story. Yeah. And Chris is a remarkable man. And so Chris and Pam and my wife and I became best of friends, and our children have grown up together. But a few years later, Pam told me that Tony needed some help with his marketing. He wanted to know how to do video marketing.
Online, yeah.
And so she said, "Do you think you'd be willing to work with Tony?" And I said, "Well, I think I could work something out." And I ended up going to Tony's home for about a day. And I ended up helping set up his video studio, teaching him how to do video marketing. And he told me a really important lesson. He said, power or proximity is power.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of if you take the 5 people you spend your life with, chances are you summed up their income and you multiplied by 5, that's probably what you make too. In other words, if you want to make more, you want to surround yourself with people who make more. If you want to accomplish more, you want to surround yourself with people who accomplish more, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So in any event, over time, I ended up starting a business with Chris and Pam. Of course, my businesses have grown here in San Diego, and as I mentioned, we have clients in over 60 countries. But 1 year ago, almost today, I discovered I had cancer.
Wow.
And I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, and ended up going through major surgery because it turned out it was so far along that if we wouldn't have caught it, probably 3 months later I'd be dead now. And I had surgery, 4 months of chemotherapy, almost 2 months of radiation therapy, and I'm now about 3 months since my last diagnosis, or my last treatment, I should say. So my hair's all grown back, I've got my weight back, and I'm normal, but I almost died about a year ago.
Wow.
And so the lesson is, there's a few lessons in all of that.
Yeah,
the
this
first,
is my question.
Yeah.
What did you learn from each of these experiences?
Well, there's a few things. I think despite all the things that I had learned and gone through, I still struggled with being enough and not feeling like I did enough or I was enough as a man and as a person. And I was always chasing the next thing, struggling, and searching for the Holy Grail, as the legend goes. And the fact of the matter is no matter how much money I made or how many accomplishments I had, it didn't necessarily mean I was happier. And I can't say I was unhappy, but what was happening is I was working so hard, and I was always worried and angry and frustrated. And,
like I do sometimes.
Yeah.
I think I have the same kind of challenge.
Yes,
Yeah.
And that it is. I mean, anyone who's an achiever, you're an achiever. Most achievers come from nothing, and they come from a very difficult background, and may have had challenges with parents. They raised with no money. So the idea of having no money and not being enough is the greatest pain many achievers have. So we compensate and we overcompensate and we work too hard, and that creates a whole host of other problems. You know, I can't remember who said it first, but more money, more problems, right?
Yeah.
And the bigger your business is, you just deal with different problems. They're quality problems, but they're different problems. So I think the big lessons, my takeaway lessons are, number one, life isn't a race. And there is no finish line, maybe except death. And I don't know about you, but I'm not in a rush to get to that finish line. And what is more important is, right now, if you look at, I mean, just take your life for example now. I've seen your videos, I've studied you, and you've accomplished a lot, and you're very young. I'm twice as old as you are. And what I can tell you is, I'm 47 years old. When you're 47, or if you're 67, you're going to look back, and the person you identify with, you're still going to think of yourself as being 17 or 27 or 24, or whatever age you are right now. Yeah. And it's just your body's going to get older. And I really believe that our souls are timeless. Our internal psychology is timeless. But our bodies force us to go through some changes. So when I was at my sickest, there was a period of time when I had 1 hour a day available to do my business and live my life and spend time with my son and my wife and also run my business. I thought my business was going to fall apart and go. And it managed to survive without me. And in fact, my business in some ways was more successful while I was away, okay, because my team took over and they started working and picking up the slack. And also they became more effective. And you know, the world doesn't stop when we get off for a little while, and there's plenty of time. And the most important point is this: is you're already successful. So celebrate in your success every moment and minute that you're alive. And there's nothing missing. There's nothing more than right now. And you know, the Buddhists always teach us about being present.
Yeah.
And appreciating and enjoying what we have. But if you're constantly on the hamster wheel seeking more,
you never lie.
It is, absolutely. We're very incongruent. So,
and do you think some people like me can learn that before to be faced to cancer or big problem?
Yeah, definitely. I think you know, some of the things that I did is I started meditating. I practiced transcendental meditation while that happened. I was given the gift of joining and doing that. And I also became very, very effective at using my hour a day. So I wrote 2 books while I was sick. I actually did a product launch while I was sick. And I had better relationships than I've ever had before. And I did it while I was in the worst pain of my life. I mean, I understand why some people, when they go through chemotherapy, just decide that they'd rather die, that they just would rather stop because the pain is so intense, and you can't make it stop. You can't just take drugs and make it go away. You just feel horrible. And there reaches a point where some people decide to go on and continue and thrive and strive, and some people choose to die. And one of the things that kept me alive, actually, is I had an opportunity to speak at one of Tony's next events. It was called Business Mastery, and it was scheduled 2 days before my last radiation treatment.
Wow.
And I was like, I have to make it. So I made arrangements with my doctors where I did 2 radiation treatments a day, 2 days, so I could fly out the day of my last treatment, and the next day I was on stage to speak in front of a whole audience. And that's part of what gave me the strength to stay alive and to be there. Of course, I have a family and friends and stuff like that too, but it was like, I have to get through this. And every day it just made me stronger. So I think you have to have an incredibly compelling vision of your future and have big reasons to share yourself and have a message that you want to give to the world, and whether it's just for one person or for millions. But also just to appreciate the flesh. I mean, this gift that we have, this body, is a remarkable, remarkable machine, you know, and whether you believe it was given to you by God or you evolved into it or whatever your belief system is, to be able to experience a life of the flesh is, and to be a human being is, I believe we have an opportunity to experience the ultimate gift of the Creator.
Wow.
And to waste that is a great curse. It's a great sin. So
And
there you go.
did you read something about the power of now before to have this event?
Yeah, I did. I had a whole bunch of things happen the past couple of years prior to this.
According to you, why some people like you or like me read something about you have to be present, you have to be there, and don't?
Yeah.
And
Well,
do that?
yeah, I think, one thing that happens is we go through cycles through our lives, and cycles of awakening. And one experience when you're 17 years old might be completely different when you're 25 or 35 or 45 or 55. The same experience has different meanings at different times in our lives. And I think if you are focused on your own internal development and paying attention to your relationship with other people in your business, and when you have a child, everything changes. When you have a husband or a wife, everything changes. When you have a near-death experience, everything changes, and you see things differently, you smell things, you taste things differently. And again, every one of those experiences have different meanings. And so I did read The Power of Now and all of those books probably a year before this happened to me. In fact, 2 years before, I had a dream that I was telling my friends in my dream that I had cancer. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of death. I've never even thought about it before. And, this is historical. What is a midlife crisis is two things. It's when you become acutely aware that you're halfway through your life and that you're on the other side of getting closer to death, okay? So it's just something that happens to every man. And I'd say many women as well, but it's a little more intense for most men. And there's also a resounding question that occurs at that point in your life, and it is this all there is? Have I done enough? And it also, you realize that you will never be a quarter, in America, football's, NFL, and I'm not a big football fan, but it's like I will never be an NFL star. Like at 45, I would never be a soccer star ever again. I'll never be an Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
And there's a death that occurs inside your mind when you realize that there's some things you just can't do any longer because your body will not allow it to happen. You're older, okay? And also there is other fear of loss that occurs, and it's usually it shocks you. And so what that does is it causes a shift in consciousness to occur. And so for me, a lot of these that happen all at once, and I just realized this is all there is. I have been working most of my life to fill a gap of not having enough and not being enough and not doing enough. And a new level of reality kicked in. And again, it was sort of like I went from a point of unconsciousness to a new degree of consciousness, I think. And so I started re-examining every part of my life, everything. And, part of me wanted to withdraw and move into a cave, stop everything. And then I was like, no, I love to give, I love to teach, I love to share, but maybe I'm not doing enough of it. But then maybe so those kinds of questions pop up. And, it's a sense of angst, anxiety. And I'd say about the time when I thought I was resolving a lot of it in my mind, I get a diagnosis of cancer.
And what did you change before and after in the way you work today? Because you still have a company, you still work, and what did you change? How do you manage your time or your life How do you make priorities between your wife, your children, your child, your son, and how do you do that now?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest shift is the shift of the world won't stop if I get off for a little while. In other words, the sense that everything needs me. I just realized that I have first of all, right now is enough. And I'm just going to smell and really pay attention. I smell better now. My sense of taste has improved. My sense of touch has improved, even though it was destroyed for a while. Chemotherapy gives you something called neuropathy, where you can't feel your fingers and your toes.
Wow.
And you lose your hair. And for a little while, I became an old man. You know, it was like I couldn't, you know, I felt like I was 85 years old. None of my body worked properly, okay? I would visit the toilet 35 times a day because the chemotherapy poisons your body so horribly. And it creates immense pain. You know, what I describe it as is, imagine if you've been the drunkest you've ever been, so bad that you're throwing up and you're sick, or you've had the worst flu you've ever experienced in your life, and double it. And you're that way for 9 months straight. That's the way it feels. And you have no energy. You can't think straight because you forget constantly, and you just can't feel except pain. So I think the first thing is I remember that I have contrast now, a lot of contrast, and I can always, you know, pull back and say,
Wow.
this is right now is 1,000,000 times better than I've ever experienced in my life, and it gets better every day. You know, I'm not still 100% yet. My brain still's a little foggy. My body's not quite 100%, but that helps, and it gave me a lot more empathy for other people. So if I see another person, I see them with a lot more compassion and empathy than I was ever capable of before. If I see someone in a wheelchair, someone who's in some form of pain, you know, it's like I can just stop and feel them fully. And so I think I appreciate someone else. I'm a lot more likely to interact with someone who I may have had a judgment about in the past. So I think living in a different state of now makes you a better servant.
And when you do videos, for example, do you connect to this kind of compassion when you do a video of training about marketing? It's not compassion.
Yeah.
Do you connect to compassion before to do the videos?
Yes. So if I, like what I do, if I were looking at this camera right now and communicating, the first thing that I do and what I teach is to speak to the one. So we teach a strategy called an avatar strategy. So when I know who my customer is,
you speak to him.
I speak to that man or to that woman. And I mostly choose women now, because what I've found is if I speak to a female audience, both men and women are going to be attracted to that. My business actually went from 17% men to over 50% women by making that shift over a period of 2 years. My highest value customers are women now. And one of my mentors once told me, his name is Joel Bauer, he said, where the men go, or where the women go, the men will follow.
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
same
not,
in nightclub.
yeah, exactly. That is exactly right. So on one hand, you could say, well, that's a sexist statement, but it really isn't. It's just that men so admire women that we are driven towards women's wisdom, you know, and I think that's a very, very powerful thing to realize.
And what do you change when you speak to women, for example, in marketing?
So what I will teach someone to do, because I have many people for many years have said, I am afraid of speaking on stage. I'm afraid of being on camera, or I don't like the way I look, or
I don't like my voice.
Don't like my voice. I don't like the way I sound. I don't have anything to share. I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything to teach. Whatever the self-doubt is. What I do is I'll ask them one question. I said, have you ever loved someone before? They'll say, well, of course I have. I said, what I want you to do right now is put your hand on your heart, and I want you to breathe in. I want you to think about that person that you love so much, and think about one person that you love. It could be your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, your dog, someone who's passed away. It doesn't matter what it is. Just think about them and fill them up. Just think about that one person and stop. And answer me a question. Right now, are you afraid of anything? Because you can't be afraid when you're in a heart space, and when you serve. And if I asked you, what's the greatest thing you ever did for that person you loved? What's the greatest experience you can remember? You'll go into that place, right? And you can breathe easy and soft, and you can't be in a place of fear. You're in a place of service. So that's the place you go every time you get on stage, every time you get in front of camera, is in a place of love and service.
Wow.
And the act of fear is a selfish act. It's you're afraid for you, and you're afraid of what other people think about you and how you might feel when they are judging you. Okay?
But if you are in service, I don't know.
Then none of that matters, because you're doing the right thing. You're doing what resonates with your core, with your heart, with your being, with your soul. And you can't be selfish when you are serving.
And do you think it's a difference between people like you, Brandon, Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins? Do you think it is the key factor of become the expert of your field? Yeah?
Yeah, I think, first of all, everyone who teaches expertise, and we do the same thing, we would tell someone that, your perspective, your life experience has value. So, Tony Robbins has a great story. When you hear his story, and it's what we call a hero transformation, okay? Tim Ferriss has his own hero transformation. Brendan Burchard has his own hero transformation. Oprah has a remarkable hero transformation, right?
Yeah.
And people fall in love with your why. And they also, when you integrate that why and you relate it to other people, then they connect with you on a deeper level. So I think the real important question is, you have to learn some skills, and you have to learn how to speak and present, which you get better at the more you do it. The more of an audience you have, of course, the better you get, right?
Yeah.
So
I was afraid to speak in front of an audience the first time.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so what shifted for you? If I said, okay, from the time that you were afraid until you attained a certain state of confidence, what changed in you? You did it, but what happened?
In doing during the moment, it's amazing what your question, because when you start, you connect to the people, and then the fear disappear.
Do you remember specifically what happened? Do you remember the moment? Because I could guess it.
The first time of my life, it's hard for me to.
Did someone say something to you? Did they thank you? Did they walk up to you and say something? Or did you see a shift in their face, in their smile, in their eyes?
Yeah, maybe. It's not
You don't
very
remember
clear.
right now? Yeah. So I can tell you, here's something very fascinating, is the moment you connect with that, I just give you that as something to meditate on and maybe journal on, is when you connect with what that is, and you determine it, you're going to be able to recreate it, and you're going to be able to recreate it in someone else. And that will make you a better teacher, 10 times the teacher you are right now. Because the act of self-examination and being able to describe the experience and how you did it is what makes a teacher great. So, and that will allow you to shift and share it. So the point I'm trying to make here is the act of becoming an expert is modeling someone else and learning the secrets and accomplishing something.
Yeah.
But doing it once doesn't mean a damn thing. That could be luck, okay? 2 times can be lucky. I don't remember who said this once, but they call it the lucky sperm club, okay? So in other words, if you're born into the right family, that might give you the opportunity to have some sort of success, because someone says, well, it's so-and-so's kid, all right? Or you have a pedigree or whatever it is. But once you've done something more than 4 times, it probably isn't an accident anymore.
Yeah.
Repeated mastery. And the most important thing is if you can look at people who are successful because you've touched them, and you can actually celebrate in their success, then you know that, so success leaves clues, as the old saying goes, And I believe Jim Rohn is credited with that statement, but I actually haven't found specific proof and evidence that he said it. I haven't found the reference precisely, but I do think that that's very, very important. Is you got to look past, and it's like, okay, one person being successful, that's great, but it's when they mentor and train other people, and they can show a pathway of consistent successes. That's pretty extraordinary. And again, I believe that comes from true self-expression and self-examination.
So, for example, I am with you, and if I would like to model, is that right? Model you. What kind of question I have to ask? What can I do to maybe to learn in a deeper level when I am with someone, and when the people who are following us, we are with someone.
Yeah. So I teach, one of the things I will teach someone is there is a strategy for extracting great information that you can model.
I love that.
Okay, so one of the things I've taught for a long time, so I can turn anyone into an expert, and I could say, okay, let's say you wanted to learn about becoming an expert, okay, and you were asking me that question. I'd say, well, here's the first thing is, chances are you're an expert at, or you're a great student in something. I don't care who you are, you've learned something that's useful. And if I were going to say, write down the top 10 frequently asked questions that either someone would or should ask you about your expertise, what would they ask? So you'd write down those 10 frequently asked questions, right?
Yeah.
And
for example, if we take my topic, the self-confidence, I will be able to write how to take action, how to manage the stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are how-to things. Usually frequently asked questions are how-to. How do I do blank? So someone might say, well, how do I make a lot of money real fast? Okay. Now that's actually a super ignorant question to ask. Or how do I make the most money as a speaker? Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is the answer, the real answer to what they want to hear probably isn't something they want to hear, because who you are has more important, more value. It's not what you do, right? So that might be one of the questions. But we'd get those top 10 frequently asked questions, and what those are, that's great knowledge, it's great information, okay? But information has no value. I can go on Google right now and find the answer to almost anything online. Does Google make people more successful?
No.
No. Okay? Now the next thing is, and that you answering those questions would be creating knowledge, okay? Now just because someone goes to college or reads a book, does that mean they're going to be successful?
No.
Right? You could go get a master's degree or a PhD and still work at Starbucks. Not that there's anything wrong with working at Starbucks, but it means that you're probably not using that knowledge. Now what you want is to experience, or to transfer experience, okay? That's the importance of being a mentor to someone, for example, to bring someone in under you who you teach and you train as a prodigy mentor for maybe a couple of years, which doesn't exist much in this world. But I want to find a way of exchanging and sharing my wisdom and my experience with you in the shortest period of time possible, because if you implement and use that experience and that wisdom, that's when you can achieve great things. So the second half of this is we wrote down the top 10 frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
And that might answer the selfish act, but the should ask questions are what I need to know. So if I go back to the expert and I go, all right, so David, what questions should someone be asking you about becoming truly successful? What are the nuances that truly successful people embody, that they become, that they are, that they believe in, that they implement every day because it's who they are and who they're congruent with, okay? So those are, again, should ask questions. So instead of not how do I make $1 million,
how I become the people.
Exactly. Who do I become in order to attract $1 million per year? Might be a more powerful question, okay? So now if I could answer that, okay, another one would be, what 5 qualities do the 5 most successful people that you want to be like all have in common with one another? Okay, now that requires some research.
I love this question.
Okay, but a frequently asked question is what an ignorant person asks, okay? Someone who hasn't thought, someone who hasn't delved in and done their research. And researching is what creates confidence, ultimately. It's constant research. It's when you have accumulated enough knowledge, okay, but then it's gone into understanding the experiences, understanding the wisdom. That's the distinction that you look for.
Right.
And that's the difference between true mastery. And I believe it was, who's the author of Blink? Malcolm Gladwell. He says, okay, it's for all of his books are awesome. But one of the things he says is that Mastery is achieved after 10,000 hours of implementation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might mean, which isn't a long time if you think about it, because a work year, at least in the United States, I don't know what it is in France, is 2,000 hours. That's what you're paid for if you earn a salary. It's 2,000 hours per year. That's typically a 40-hour work week with a couple weeks off for vacation. So that would mean 5 years of doing something, of implementing, focused on that one thing. And I don't know about you, but if I were going to say to you right now, in your mind, do you have someone who you believe is a true master at something, someone you really admire?
Yeah, Tony Robbins, for
Okay,
example.
Tony. So Tony right now is about 50 years old,
Yeah.
and he's been speaking on the stage since he's been about 18 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have roughly 3 solid decades, 30 years, and he's been on stage, okay, presenting and solving problems, but he probably invests not just the standard 2,000 hours, he works twice as hard as most human beings do.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
it's a triple.
Exactly. So, and he's a multiplier. He understands this whole idea of wisdom transfer, okay, and modeling. So he compresses time. That's a gift that he has, right? And he compresses experience, and he goes and he knows how to ask great questions. But from just a pure implementation point of view, let's say he's putting in 5,000 hours, okay, instead of 2,000. So if you take 30 times 5, what do we have here?
Wow.
Okay, he's probably, that might be 150,000 hours of implementation. Again, it might not be that much all the time, but he's on most of the time. I've spent enough time with him. So, plus he's compressing other people. He's masterminding constantly. He surrounds himself with the best, which also adds to that. You look at Michael Jackson as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, now he was dancing when he was 3 or 4 years old. He died when he was 50. Okay, he put in his 4,000 hours of practice a year at least. Okay, so he put in 45 years roughly of time honing his skills, driven by, definitely obsessive and compulsive about his dancing and his behaviors. But you look at the Beatles, for example, Paul McCartney, John Lennon. How many hours did they perform before they made it big, before they were discovered? They put in more than their 10,000 hours. Okay, and then, he's almost 70 years old now. He's been performing since he's been 15 years old or so, 55 years. Put in more than his 2,000 hours a year.
Yeah, it's
right?
great.
Okay, so there's no such thing as get rich quick. Okay, there might be get rich quick once. Like I said, you can be a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. You can have an accident, but
Yeah,
doing
but
it 4 times.
you don't build the character.
Precisely.
Yeah. So I would love to know from your point of view, what could be the 5 traits of people who are an expert in a field?
Sure.
The 5 common points of you, Tony Robbins, Brandon, and there are too much people who are inspiring.
All right. Well,
The 5 common points.
I will say, now I can't speak for anyone except for me. So I'm going to say one thing that drives me is, for a long, long time, not so much now, I was driven by an incredibly large emptiness, okay, of not having enough and not being enough, okay? That motivated me because growing up, I hated being poor. I hated it, okay? And I swore I'd never be poor, okay? So that certainly was a pain. And I also had some other pains of, I was never a popular kid in school. I wasn't the best at anything. I wasn't great at any sports. I knew I was smart, but the educational system didn't tell me I was smart, okay? I felt dumb, okay? So again, I was motivated by pain of not being enough and not having enough. And now the foolish thing is, the fact of the matter is I had 2 parents who loved me and I came from a good family, all right? I didn't see what I had, but what I will tell you is, in my experience, a lot of people who are very successful and are high achievers are driven by a big pain somewhere, okay? And again, I won't speak for anyone else, but I will speak that in my experience, that's what I observe in most of them.
Wow.
Tony certainly had a lot of pain that drove him. I can't, without betraying some of my friends, I can't speak for some of the other people you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So some stuff is public and something isn't public. But I will say that virtually everyone I know who's successful is driven by a massive pain. Now the next thing is, as they evolve, they are driven by contributing. Now, contribution is a beautiful thing, because when you learn and can continually contribute selflessly, you're rewarded in great ways. And there's a delicate balance between contributing selflessly and also being rewarded.
Yeah.
Okay? That is a curse, because the more successful you become, the more popular you become, and also the more visible you become. And there's a certain amount of pain that goes along with that. It's sort of like, again, really successful people have no privacy. But I'm going to stay focused on answering your question here. So pain would be the first one. Having a massive sense of purpose and contribution is the second one. I also think they have a ravenous need to learn constantly and observe and find the secrets. So an absolute dedication towards answering questions or asking questions and getting answers, and finding the answers and solutions everywhere possible. Another thing, undoubtedly, it's modeling. They stop at nothing to find people who are successful and figure out why they are successful at what they do. And the ones who I would say are more enlightened or more conscious and more aware will find out who they are and what their qualities of character are, so they can model those. So again, it's not about doing. Ultimately, it comes down to, yes, precisely. And the other thing is, the mark of a failure is a quitter. Okay? So the only time you fail is when you quit. Just because you failed and you're doing it again and you're figuring out a way, that just means you're building character, right? And you're also figuring out what doesn't work. The pathway, a blind man could find his way out of any circumstance given enough time.
Yeah.
Okay? And having some way of marking where he had been before. So you have to have a mechanism. But the whole point is, you could be in a giant sphere with one hole in it, and you could be stripped of everything but touch. But if you maybe found a way of maybe laying down a piece of tape or sand everywhere you had been, so you could navigate your way around just with your hands, you could figure out how to get out of that sphere through one hole.
Yeah.
And I think, but that'd be a foolish game. So the next thing, if I were going to add a sixth, is having a system. A systemization. You've got to figure out systems, because accidents can happen twice. They don't happen 4 times.
Yeah.
And so systematic action and systematic discipline.
Great. I love what you the six steps, the 6 traits that you are describing. It's very inspiring. Very inspiring for me. I would love to have information, because you did live cast, right?
Yes.
Live cast with 3 millions, right? 3 million of sales.
Dollars, yeah. Uh-huh.
Of dollars. My first question does it make a difference to do a webinar or a live cast?
Sure.
Is it important to see the speaker?
Yes. So I'll contextualize this a little bit. So, and just to clarify, so what we did, we had what was known as a $9 million launch. So in other words, we invented a product and we promoted it over a period of 2 weeks. And on the final day during a presentation, a lot of people watched, and it was actually in the Digital Cafe in this set. About 2,000 people were watching us live, and roughly 1,000 people watching bought our program for $3,000. So that was the $3 million in one day that you're talking about. And what we did to accomplish that, it was, so first of all, on that day, what happened is we invited people who are using our products, and we have a philosophy, we call it the hero economy, but it's people, a lot of them who might have similar backgrounds. They were poor, they may have been broke, they had business problems, they'd tried and failed, they'd been bankrupt, and they invested in our programs, and in a very short period of time made quite a bit of money. Some of them may have made $5,000 in one day or a week. Other people made $250,000 over a couple of months implementing what we teach. And in that particular case, the product was called Main Street Marketing Machines, and we taught people how to start their own business helping local and small businesses with their marketing and their video marketing. Okay? So what we did is we invited people who had used our previous programs. They came on and they told their stories. There were testimonials. And we asked them all these important questions. What did you do that made you successful? But who did you become to be successful? What changed in your mind? How did you behave differently? How did your behaviors change? How did your mindset change? And we broadcast this show live, in that case, for 12 hours straight.
Wow.
Okay, so it was from noon to midnight.
Wow.
And it was just like one person after another, and then we told people, okay, if you'd like to get this program, we'd hold up the product and say, visit this website right now, or click the buy button to get in, and you're going to meet people like this. You're going to be able to learn the same skills they have. In fact, we made our own students teachers. Okay, so they taught what they learned, and it was very exciting. And part of the opportunity was these people could see themselves in our guests, and they also got to interact. So it was a live interaction. Now, we did this back when doing live casts was difficult and challenging and expensive too. And nowadays you can do it for free. If you do a Google Hangout, for example, you can broadcast on a Google Hangout for free. You can have the chat for free. But at the time, and we do live casts very frequently now, at least 3 times a year, where we sell products, and they're still very successful. Not that successful, but the secret is, first of all, having a great product to sell. Okay, so let's just say you've got a great product and you have what's known as a great offer. The next thing is you have to know who your audience is. In our case, we know that our audience is comprised of 3 different types of people. The first one are people who are either have a small business of their own, and they want to increase their value. They want to make more money. They want to become competition and recession proof, which we all do. We don't like to compete, right? Yeah. We also don't want our income to go down, especially during up and down economies. Now the whole world economy is changing. We want to find a way to stabilize that, and we want to find a more effective way to market and promote ourselves. So in our world, we call that a 1. Okay, so if you have a business and you want to do that, you're a 1. A 2 is someone who wants to reinvent themselves. Maybe they've been doing something for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but they're not passionate about it anymore. And they want to reach more people or change the way they do business, or maybe change their customers or change their products. That's a reinventor. That's number 2. And a number 3 is someone who wants to create and start their own business by becoming a high-paid marketing consultant, or a product creation consultant, or someone who helps other businesses brand and market themselves more effectively. So that's a number 3. So our students, our customers, can categorize themselves in a 1, 2, or 3, and we have great products that will help them. So by knowing that, I was able to attract partners who would promote our products in this live event, have them sign up and register, and show up for what amounted to be a live TV show. And again, it was done kind of like what we are here, but we'd have multiple guests and we'd change it up. And we had people, I'd probably say at least 500, if not more, of the people who watched us the full 12 hours.
Wow.
It was crazy. And we still have that to this day. It's not uncommon for 40% of our audience to watch, and now we do them 6 hours instead of 12, but they'll watch a full 6 hours because the content and the people are so compelling and interesting. And they're so successful because you really see these before and after stories of people who've accomplished great things in a pretty short period of time.
Great.
Yeah. So I think the bottom line answer is we celebrate the success of our customers, and we bring them on, and we get down to the why. We ask them compelling questions.
But how do you do when you have three kind of people? How can you speak to? They are different.
Right.
Not the same problems, not the same difficulties.
Well, for example, I have a. Let's say, for example, there's one of my favorite number twos is a woman named Sue Ferreira, and she is. I guess she won't mind if I say this because you can do the math. She's in her 60s, and she has been a pediatric anesthesiologist for over 40 years. So that means she puts on the gas to help kids go before they go into operations. And she did that for over 40 years, and she reached a point where she just doesn't want to do it anymore. She loves her job, she loves working with kids, but she just doesn't want to be a doctor, and this is up in Canada. So she decided what she wanted to do is retire and still make money and write a book about how to continue to make money after you retire, but you don't want to stop. In other words, you still feel compelled and motivated to do something unique. And what she's doing is she created a product called Live Your Retirement Dream. And it's all about doing what she's doing, which she's going to teach other people how to start their own small businesses and speak and teach and be an expert and travel the world and make a living doing it, which is exactly what she's doing. So she's making a product about what she's making a product about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And she's teaching other people, some of the same strategies we do, like how to write books, how to create programs and products, how to speak, how to present, but it's geared towards retirement age professionals. So she dove in. So to people watching, they'd be like, wow. So you don't have to be a number 2 to relate to that great story, right? You could be a number 1 and go, God, that's pretty interesting. You could be a number 3 and say, now that's really interesting. So the answer to your question is we have to find really compelling people that tell compelling stories and ask them compelling questions. But what I do is I try to relate to everyone watching a particular story. What my job is, and what I'm pretty good at doing now, is figuring out how to make every single guest interesting to all 3 types of people. Okay? Because I'll have another person. So I've got another guy, and he runs a radio station. Okay? Well, one of the problems with radio these days is you can listen to the radio on the internet. You can listen to podcasts. There's a million other ways to get your content. So he's competing, and he found that the amount of money he was making from his radio advertising was going down. So he decided to combine using mobile marketing in his advertising and how to use online marketing and video marketing to drive more listeners to his radio station, and also how to get more money from his customers, because not only are they just paying him for radio ads now, they're paying for mobile marketing campaigns and online marketing campaigns. So he could quadruple the amount of money that he's charging from his existing customer base.
Yeah.
Not too bad, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting to a 1, 2, or 3, especially when we showed proof and how he's doing it and what he's doing. So that was pretty compelling as well. So again, he's a number 1. And a number 3, well, there's more number 3s, because a lot of people who already have a business are like, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll have a bookkeeper, for example. And the bookkeeper is right now doing bookkeeping for businesses, and they learn about this marketing and how to do video marketing, how to do social media marketing and mobile marketing. And we ask them one simple question. How many of your customers that are paying you for bookkeeping right now probably need to market themselves more effectively too? And the answer is all of them. And they see what they're charging for bookkeeping, and it'll be like, you could add on and start doing marketing services in addition to your bookkeeping to all your existing customers, and probably charge 3 times more for your marketing services than you're getting paid as a bookkeeper. So we've got people who in their existing businesses start offering additional products and services to their existing customers.
Great.
Okay? Now we opened up, and again, all it is you're opening up someone's mind to what is possible.
So do you
Because that's what great marketing is. And in a show environment, it's really compelling.
So
it's
do you
fun.
think the only way to do a live cast or a webinar is to have guests?
No, not at all. No, absolutely not. So right now, you could just go, it'd be you on camera, right? And you could speak to anyone.
For example,
of these
if I would
cameras.
like to do a webinar this week on self-confidence, imagine that.
Yeah.
What could be the key factors?
Well, one is you could do it just like a good talk radio show where people get to type in their questions. You can also have them add with Skype video or GoToMeeting video. That's easy to do that, or do it in what's known as a Google Hangout. Okay, it's free. You can add people and have them ask a question or type it in, and then you can respond. So what you could do is you could say, we're going to do a live cast on improving your self-confidence today, and you'll make a initial presentation, maybe a 10-minute mini speech, and then you'll say, in just a moment, I'm going to be taking your questions. I'm going to answer 21 questions today, so start typing them in right now, and my fantastic producer, Julie, is going to be picking the best questions that I'm going to be answering.
Okay.
So boom, now you can put together a show.
So you don't talk in 1 hour alone, just 10 minutes and you ask questions.
No, it's customer provided content.
Okay.
Then that positions you as the expert, which is going to make people like and trust you even more, and they're going to see how incredibly bright you are and how helpful you are, and they're going to want to attend your live events. They're going to want to buy your programs and your products and your books and your CDs and your DVDs.
And do you sell the event, for example, a live event at the end of the webinar?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you don't want to do it just at the end. You want to do it starting in maybe a third of the way through. You'll start what we call seeding it. So you'll want to start talking about it. I'd say to the camera, if I were talking to the camera right now, I'd say, hey, look, if you like what we're doing right now and you're getting your questions answered and you're excited about this, how would you like to attend a live event where we're going to not only do this this way, but we're going to have 2 solid days. And when you walk away from that experience, you are going to have more confidence and know how to leverage your experience and your expertise even more. Now, just stay tuned. In just a few moments, I'm going to talk about that and explain how you can take advantage of an early bird discount that we have. So stay tuned and make sure you post a question. Okay, that's the little thing that I would do. And that'll keep them engaged. Go ahead and type. And you might want to do a live raffle or a drawing on that as well to keep people interested and enticed.
And do you sell only one product, or you can sell 2 products in a new?
Well, here's what I've learned. I've tried selling 3 products and it doesn't work very well. So I would recommend doing 1. Now you might do a little one and a big one, but generally speaking, unless you are a very, very talented salesperson, I would suggest focusing on one thing.
Okay, amazing. So, Mike, I have a serious question for you. I would like to help people to become losers.
Sure, I love helping losers lose. Yeah.
Me too. So, do you have advices, tips, or maybe first steps we have to do?
Sure. I think the first thing is you have to quit. You have to just quit all the time. So that's the thing it's just like, don't ever finish anything and never try again, because if it doesn't work once, then you should just quit, because it just means that someone else made you do something that was wrong, and it's their fault. Which brings us to the second tip. Okay, you have to blame. Okay, blaming is the key. You have to blame everyone else for the state you're in, and it's always someone else's fault. Okay, and the other one is you have to complain incessantly. If you really, really just want to just really lose the best way possible, you have to spend your time with whiners, blamers, and complainers.
Build a team.
Oh yeah, a team of whiners. Team wine, yeah. And that's not a drinking club. It's just like you have to make noises like this and just, oh my God, see, I can't believe what happened to me today. It was so and so's fault. That's a whining club.
It's great. So it is.
I think that's what Americans sound like to most to French, doesn't it? Haven't you ever heard that before?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you have a last step?
Let's see. So we got whining, blaming, complaining, quitting, hating. You have to hate a lot. So they call them haters online. So you just have to attack people that you're jealous of, who have accomplished great things, and make them wrong. You got to find as many ways possible to make them wrong, and say that whatever they're doing, they're probably stealing, they're probably doing something corrupt, and the way they do what they're doing is wrong and it's bad, and it's just a matter of time before they get there. So hating is a really, really
and I love
powerful.
your last tip, because you are building beliefs to become a loser. It's great.
Absolutely, because if you're successful, you had to have done something wrong to achieve great success. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Oh,
Mike,
it's my
for these
pleasure.
best answers.